Hey, folks, you're listening to the Jobs Podcast. I am your host, Tim Hendricks. I am excited about the interview today. Dr. Lauren Daly is half of the dynamic duo over there at College Hacked. If you haven't checked out their YouTube channel and you're looking for college information, career information, education information, you have to check their website out, collegehack.com, and look up their YouTube channel. It is a gold mine. So welcome, Dr. Lauren. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks. What a glowing introduction.
Oh, yeah. I try to make people look good when they're on the show. Now, your counterpart over there, Dr. Clifford Stummy,
Mhm.
you guys kind of tag team the whole college hack thing. Is that right?
It is right.
Okay. Well, let's start off. I always start off with a little bit of an origin story about where my guests, they were born, their upbringing, and just kind of gives a little bit of a snapshot into who you are. And let's just kind of start where you were born and go from there.
Sure. So I was born in San Diego, California, to
Hmm.
a conservative Christian family, and I was homeschooled all the way through, well, I guess up to high school. So I think that was a big part of my upbringing and my academic journey because I mostly took oral exams with my mom. She would ask me questions. And so when I got to high school and I started taking proper exams, I had no exam taking skills really at all. And that was not necessarily a failure on her part, but more of just kind of a learning process for both of us, I think.
Hmm.
And I'm still that way where I would much prefer to give a presentation or do an oral exam. But yeah, so that's where I grew up and was born and how it all started.
What part of San Diego? Because I went to Point Loma in San Diego.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I was over in Spring Valley, so more on the eastern side of the city. But yeah, you were out in like pretty
Okay.
pretty places.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was nice. I couldn't afford to live there for too long, but I'm in Missouri now, so that tells you a lot. But
Getting
so,
expensive.
yeah, so you were homeschooled. How far into your education were you homeschooled? All the way through high school, or?
Up to high school, and then I went to a private Christian high school.
Oh, okay. So after high school, did you know you were going to go to college, or how did that all play out?
Yeah, great question. My mom had a famous saying in our household. She would always say, "College isn't for everyone, but it's for you." So it was predetermined that I would be going to college. But I got pretty lucky, I think, because when I was in high school, I took an AP biology class that just kind of on a whim, it shocked both my parents. They were like, "Are you sure you want to take on so much? You're doing, yearbook, you're playing golf, you're doing all these other things. This seems like academically it might be really challenging." And for some reason, I was very drawn to it. And so I went through that class and I totally fell in love with science. And so my goal became to go to medical school. And so,
Hmm.
I was already going to go to college anyway. So it just became a matter of putting the pieces together to get the prereqs for medical schools.
Did you know what area in medicine you wanted to zero in on?
Yes, I'm very ADHD. I love to treat chaotic problems and bring order in the midst of chaos. So I was thinking emergency department all the way. I can either
Oh,
admit or discharge you and never see you again.
nice. So just
Yeah,
constant chaos and excitement.
exactly.
Yeah. So where did you shift gears to? Because you're obviously not in medical school now. How did
Yes.
that transpire?
Yeah, it was a long drawn out process of self discovery for sure. I loved science, but as I progressed through undergrad and I took the prerequisites that I needed for medical schools, which is another fun story. I designed my own degree. We like to call them Chipotle degrees on the channel, but I did interdisciplinary studies at Liberty and put together all the prereqs for med school so I could skip botany and ecology and the things that didn't really interest me. And when I got done with my undergrad degree, I realized I had worked full time, sometimes taken 22 credits in a single semester of upper level sciences, and I just didn't have the background that I wanted in those subjects for the MCAT exam. I didn't feel prepared. It had just changed from a 4 hour exam to an 8 hour exam. That's the medical admissions test. And
Hmm.
so I just thought to myself, I need to do some more to prepare myself. I'm not ready. So I decided to do a master's degree at Liberty in biomedical sciences, and they had just, it was the first year of the program, and so they had offered this option to be a GSA, a graduate student assistant, and have your degree paid for while you were also teaching nursing students anatomy. So I got to teach at the same time that I was going through my master's.
That is a full load of, you were busy. Good grief.
Yes, there was a period of time where I slept about 6 hours a night. If I was lucky, it was usually about 4 to 6. But I was shadowing overnights in the hospital, trying to get experience hours, and I was teaching full time, going to school full time. It was pretty crazy.
So how was your decision to steer away from, you got accepted into medical school, if I remember right?
I did,
And
yeah. Two of the three schools I applied to, I was very happy about that.
but you decided you weren't going to go down that path, correct?
Yes, exactly. So
How was that received by your friends and family? Did you get kinda some concerned looks or
oh my gosh, yeah. I had been on this single track, very focused, tunnel vision towards this goal of going to medical school. And then
mm,
it seemed like at the same time it all finally came to fruition and I was accepted. I was telling everyone, "Oh yeah, I'm not into that anymore." That's kind of what it felt like. But behind the scenes, the reality was it was the teaching that changed my life. When I was teaching those nursing students, I started to realize how discombobulated, we'll say, the curriculum is in medical education and how much better it could be. There's so much low hanging fruit, things we could do differently to help students retain information and have a better overall experience. One of the weird, pervasive things going on in medical education is, oh, I went through this horrible program and got abused when I was in my health education program. So that's just how it is. And that should be the same for students who are coming through. And it's like,
yeah.
no, we don't need to perpetuate bad cycles just because you went through it. Let's make things better for people in the future, not, keep the status quo. So I really got passionate about changing medical education to be more efficient and to treat students better because they're giving up so much already anyway, financially, socially, they're sacrificing a lot to go into a helping profession to help people. So we should be helping them. So it really changed my perspective. And I found myself not really wanting to pursue medical school myself as a student, but to try to make medical schools better for students.
When you talk about the efficiency improvements that you saw and the curriculum changes, this could probably be an episode in and of itself, but can you give me some high points about what did you see that you thought, "This is awful, this stinks, this is horrible. I've gotta change all of this, and so I'm taking a completely different direction in my career."
Yeah, a really good example is what I did my dissertation on, and that was the remediation process in medical education. And the
Mm,
reality is, most schools, when a student fails a course, especially in medical school, the steps that are taken to fill that knowledge gap so that they can move forward with their cohort are extremely inadequate. There just isn't enough being done. Typically, what we do, and this is embarrassing, but is in US medical schools, we give a student a test, they fail the test, they fail the class, and then we say, okay, you failed the class, here's a copy of that test, read the answers over and over, and we'll give you the same test, and if you pass it, you can move on. And
oh
the
my
problem
goodness.
with that, especially in degrees where at the end of it you're given a national exam, is that you didn't learn that material. So now you're going to fail that portion of your national exam down the road unless you plug that knowledge gap somehow.
So you're basically being tested on your memory short term so
Yes,
you can pass a test, but you're not learning anything.
that's right.
Good grief.
Yeah.
Well, I'm irritated now at our medical field, but so you saw some changes, you wanted to make some changes. Now what?
Yeah, so I went down that road. I worked for two different medical schools, helping kind of reshape curriculum and working with students, trying to make the process better and their lives better. And I realized at both of those schools there were the same systematic problems going on with leadership that I was just not going to be in a position to change. So I was just about to finish up my PhD. I had been accepted to those medical schools. Before I attended, I went to them and said, "Thanks so much for the acceptance. I'm going to go ahead and decline. I've decided instead to do a PhD in education and focus it towards medical education." So I was about to finish up my PhD. I had worked for a couple of medical schools doing what I thought I wanted to do, and I was pretty miserable. I felt like the environment was not conducive to change or growth. It was just a lot of very similar looking people making decisions that were not in the best interest of students, and that just isn't what I want to be a part of. And so around that same time, Cliff called me up. We had worked together in Virginia at Liberty for a number of years. We were faculty there together. We ran the Chipotle degree there together for a while. And so he called me and said, "Hey, I started this company called College Hacked based on a lot of the advising stuff that you taught me when we were at Liberty together. Do you want to come work for me?" And I said, "Absolutely."
To jump back just a second, I guess the resistance that you felt or that you encountered on these at these two different schools, is it a systemic thing or is it just this is how we've always done it and it works, so we're not going to improve it? What's behind the resistance to improvement?
It's an excellent question. I think it's a few different things. With anything, there's usually multiple factors. But in my experience, a lot of it is ego. A lot of it is, because I went through it, you should also have to suffer. Suffering is inherently a part of service industries. And I
Mm,
just don't think that that has to be true in so many ways. I think you're automatically sacrificing a lot of yourself and your own life and time and finances to go a direction like that. Why can't we at least make the education part of it smoother? Why do we have have to say, oh, by tomorrow you need to know these 300 terms instead of spacing it out like normal people would in a different type of curriculum. There is enough time for the things that we want to teach them if we do it in an efficient way that is respectful of their time. And if we give them, directions in advance, syllabi in advance, just a lot of little pragmatic, practical, easy, low hanging fruit things that I was not seeing happening. Like, for example, there were delays on giving students the times that they needed to be at class all the way up to like the day before classes started in several instances at both schools. Like, we can't tell the kids what time they need to be at class in advance. That seems a little bit silly, guys.
Well, yeah, that is a perfect example of low-hanging fruit. My
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah.
I can understand if you were trying to turn a battleship around, but if you're just
Right.
trying to, smooth out the sailing, I don't know why that would be such a problem, but it's probably just ingrained in some of these institutions. This is how we've always done it. And excuse me, so this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah, and I think the focus now is a lot. If you think about parenting, I think this aligns really well with our idea of parenting. 20, 30 years ago, kids were seen and not heard. That parents were
Hmm.
not driving you to all kinds of, basketball games and music lessons and things the way that they do now. There's just a different focus on investing, I think, in your kids, and it's almost like this keep up with the Joneses war between parents and their kids and others. But anyway, it's that same way with medical students where, we want to do what's right for them, but what's right for them has changed over time. And it's not just beat them up with a bunch of material and leave them on their own and the strong will survive. We aren't like
Yeah.
that anymore.
Well, I'm Generation X, and so it was kind of a Lord of the Flies a little bit as far as my
Yes.
generation. And I can see both sides of it. My generation has this little spot where we can see the older and the younger generations, and
Mm,
I think we can learn something from both. There's a time and a place to grind it out and knuckle down. Not everything should be a video game or just come easy, but at
yes.
the same time, we can't just always stay in this rut because that's the rut that we've always been in.
Yeah, exactly. And if there are ways to decrease the pain that someone goes through in order to enter a helping profession, that seems like something we should probably do.
Sure. I want to go down a quick rabbit hole. Something you just said tripped a question in my head. The learning that a lot of these online schools offer now, the Purdue and the Liberty and stuff like that. What's changed about the online learning that makes it? Is it more efficient, or is it just more streamlined, or is it a better way to learn?
That's a great question. I think the best thing that's happened in higher education in the last maybe 10 or 15 years is this continuous move towards offering a variety of ways to finish, because the reality is everybody has different goals. When I get a client who comes to me for college hacked, they might say the value for the degree, the value of the degree for me is in it being completed, not in the learning I would do during the degree, because I need to check a box, which is a real situation that exists, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that.
Yeah.
But other clients might come to me and say the learning in the degree is the value for me. I want to learn from the degree how to have skills that will propel me into a new job, or something like that. And those are two totally different use cases, but they're pursuing oftentimes the same degree. So it matters a lot that there are different ways to approach education for different people. An 18-year-old kid right out of high school is going to get a lot more value from the general education section of a degree than an adult who's 50 or 60 and has been in their terminal degree for 30 years and suddenly just needs a degree for HR.
Right. In my department that I work at, the fire department, if you want to promote up into a chief officer role now, they require that you have a bachelor's degree. There are folks that have been doing this job for decades. They can do it in their sleep,
Yep.
but they have to get that box checked in order to even apply for the job that they sometimes have already been doing, just volunteering or filling in temporarily or whatnot. So there absolutely is a lane of folks where I just need to finish to check this box. I don't need the knowledge because I've already got it from experience.
Right. And especially if the job post itself says bachelor's degree. If you're not telling me what field it needs to be in, then you're telling me that the bachelor's is not actually necessary to complete that job function set,
Yeah,
right? It's just
right.
that you either need to filter down less applicants or you're trying to meet some HR, like social, the way that people are able to view the company. Oh, we have X amount of people with degrees at this company, or that sort of thing.
Sure. Do you find that a lot of folks, I mean, do you have a percentage? Is it mostly people coming to you saying, I just need to check a box? What is the current climate like with your customers?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've had about 1,300 clients since we started a couple of years ago. And I would say out of those ones that I've seen so far, probably 900 to 1,000 of those want to check the box as quickly as possible, and the major doesn't
Wow.
matter. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from COVID, right? When COVID happened, we
Hmm.
shifted from hiring geographically to hiring people from all over the place, and now you've got thousands of applicants for jobs that used to have 10 or 100, applications, and they just can't look through all those people, so now we're requiring bachelor's degrees just to filter.
Wow. That was Thanks for going down that rabbit hole with me. Now, I kind of took you off pace. You said that Dr. Clifford called you and said, "Hey, all the stuff that you taught me, I started this company.
Yeah.
Walk me through how that all kind of played out."
Yeah, that's definitely a very reductionist statement because in reality, he got his start many years ago doing homeschool co ops. He would go to these gatherings of homeschool parents and give them presentations about CLEP exams for their kids so that they could save on college costs.
Hmm.
So he's been doing this for a really long time. And then, of course, he being the director of the interdisciplinary studies program at Liberty, he got a front row seat and got to kind of control that process of helping students reach their academic goals in various ways. So yeah, he definitely brought a lot to the table. Plus, thank goodness he's the face of the YouTube because that's not something I would enjoy taking over full time. So he's always asking, and I'm always pushing him off. But yeah, so
The I married my wife was homeschooled, and so I ask the questions, and she tells me what questions to ask. She's the smart one out of the group, you know.
I love it. Yes, you're the head, but she's the neck, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. So you guys decided to team up,
Mhm.
and you started. What was that like when you first started? Just we're going to be on YouTube. People are going to see me. Like how's that all kind of? Was it hard to
Yes.
adjust?
I am surprised by how little adjustment there was, I think, actually, because I'm a really introverted person. You wouldn't know that
Hmm.
from a phone call, of course, because I don't have to give nearly as much energy not seeing you or, being in your presence. But yeah, I am personally very introverted. So I thought, oh, this is going to be really difficult for me. I don't want to be, in the public eye, but it helps a lot that we're not by any means famous. So it's not like I can't go to the grocery store in my pajamas and be ignored. I still have anonymity, thankfully. But yeah, but I think the biggest thing was probably realizing that people are going to see my thoughts about education and think that I am ruining or tainting education somehow, and that happens all the time.
Hmm. Well, I mean, your anonymity may be going away because I've been watching your YouTube channels growing pretty quickly. Every time I kick on there, you have more subscribers. So
Thanks. Yeah, it's been
get a
pretty
wig and
consistent.
some glasses, and start hiding.
I will. I absolutely will.
So you started doing the YouTube channel. You're putting out videos. What's it? I mean, do you have regular meetings with Dr. Clifford as far as what's the topic for this, or do you each kind of take a specific part of this entity and focus on that, and then you get together for the Q&A, or how does the job breakdown happen?
Yeah, for the first year or so, Cliff was pretty much doing all of the social media stuff, and then I would come in for Q&A videos every now and again. And
Mm,
typically, we'll film 4 or 5 videos in a sitting, and then break them up and distribute them over time on the channel. So it wasn't really a huge part of my everyday. But in the last year or so, it's definitely ratcheted up where I'm doing more of that, more scripting of videos, more research for different video concepts. We'll get together every now and again and spitball through ideas, we're looking at the metrics of the channel and what people are really looking for more information about. We get some requests from people pretty consistently, like, hey, can you do a terminal level degree video, like doctorates and PhDs? And there just really isn't enough of the population looking for that sort of stuff for us to warrant a whole video on it, especially when Cliff has about 6 other businesses that he's running at all times. So
good
he's
grief.
always, yes, he gets money from those, and this is his baby, his passion project. It's really awesome.
So let's talk about online education. As far as you mentioned a minute ago, CLEP tests, and CLEP stands for what?
College level exam preparation, I think.
Okay. Now, those are just basically if you have the knowledge in a certain subject, you can kind of test out. Is that a fair
Right, it's
summary?
just a high stakes test, exactly.
Okay. Do you find that a lot of folks go into those CLEP tests thinking, I got this, and they just think because they know stuff and they're kind of interested in it that they can just sail through it? Or does that happen quite a bit?
Definitely the reverse. Most people psych themselves out of any ability to take a CLEP exam.
Oh,
So
okay.
most of our clients, I would say, are adults. Been out of school for a long time, and so the reason they haven't gone back is because they think, oh, I'm not smart enough, or I can't hack it. I don't have the skills for completing this. So most won't even approach CLEP exams. But actually, CLEPs in some cases are really helpful for skipping, like for example, 12 essays on Sophia that would be required, where you could just do one single 2 hour CLEP exam over basic high school English and knock out both English classes at certain schools.
You know, the Sophia and the study.com and the CLEP test, this stuff didn't exist when I was younger. And it's so cool. When I stumbled
Yeah.
onto this, my son it didn't quite understand my excitement, but I'm like, yeah, I said, man, you have no idea the gold mine that's sitting right here. And then, I watched some of your videos and I'm like, you can get a bachelor's degree in less than 13,000 bucks, buddy. You have no idea
Totally.
the opportunity that's right here staring you in the face. And
Mhm.
he's like, whatever, I'm like,
Yes.
golly. And I said, look, man, mom and I are paying for this. So you are going to sit down and watch these videos.
That's
And then he
awesome.
started doing it. And I think, when you can get a teenager to go, well, okay, then
Yes.
that's a win.
Yes.
Do you have a lot of people that are most of your clients in the adult arena, or do you have folks that are still in high school that say, hey, I want to get a start on this now, doing the CLEP test, Sophia, study.com, stuff like that?
Yeah, we definitely do. Actually, I'd say a growing population of our client base is younger students, in particular their parents who are finding us, maybe even for themselves. And then they're thinking, whoa, hold on, there's a lot of applicability here for my kids, which means less money that I'm spending in the long term, but still setting them up for success. I think, especially with the economic changes recently and kind of the
Yeah.
unknowns about the future and what's coming, most people are looking for ways to reduce their costs and the input, especially if you're having to take loans or go out on a limb. Not only is higher ed getting slammed in the media right now, and much of it for good reason, but people are just concerned in general about finances and where they're spending their money.
Yeah. And college is not getting any cheaper. I mean,
No,
you go to a
no.
4 year, you can buy a house for what it's going to cost you to get a
Yes,
traditional bachelor's anymore.
that's right.
What is, I, I know that you do the consultation part of it, but I'm going to try and pry a little bit of information
Yeah,
out of
go
you for the listeners. If, like my other son, he is 15 years old, he'll be a
Mhm.
sophomore. What is some advice that you would give for a high school student to get a huge jump on their college education and their future?
Yeah, for kids, especially if they're not yet 18 or graduated high school, the biggest part of hacking for them is how to get credits that are going to have longevity, because we just don't really know what the next few years looks like for Sophia or study. So while it's not a bad idea to have them get on Sophia and accumulate some credit that way, you only have to be 13 to start a Sophia account, which is pretty cool. So they can start really young. But if they're already several years away from starting college, one of the things about hacking is it has an expiration date for sure. The longer you take from the time that you get the credit to the time you roll it into the school and take your final classes and graduate, the longer that timeline is, the more chance there is that things are going to change and you're going to need to either retake classes or something's going to
Mm.
not quite pan out the way you originally planned. So for kids, AP credit and CLEP exams are by far the safest, most long-lasting forms of credit that they could be going after.
What is different about the CLEP exams versus the Sophia and study.com avenue? Is it the governing body that oversees them?
It's the proctor testing, because at the end
Okay.
of it, you always have that standardized exam that's either in a testing center. Now, sometimes you can do it at home, but that's still relatively on the rare side, I would say. Most people are still going to a testing center. With AP, you have to be attached to a high school class to even sit for that. So there's a lot of, you've been guided through the class and now you're taking this guided exam. So I think it's what's a good word? Maybe the closely guarded nature of it. Whereas Sophia and study and those kind of guys, those are open book, open notes now. So
Mm. Well, yeah. I mean, somebody could just find the answers and not really learn the information.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What do you like most about your job?
I think all of the different people from all the different walks of life that I get to interact with. I mean, literally, where else could you get such a swath of humanity that you just get to hear from and step into their lives for, a few hours? Everyone from truck drivers to C-suite executives to Apple geniuses to, all kinds of people in all different situations that either want to complete a degree because maybe it's been on their bucket list their entire life. I've had a number of clients in their 70s and 80s who say, I'm running my last few laps here and it's been a side mission all my life to go back and get my degree, and now's the time. So, yeah, I think getting to see so many different perspectives and ways that you could live life is really fun.
I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole as far as the actual day to day of going to an online school, and I know that it will vary a little bit depending on who the or what university or school that you're taking your online courses from. But the way I see this as an outsider looking in is you literally need a laptop and an internet connection, and that's it.
Yeah, pretty much.
And you can get a bachelor's degree for a fraction of the cost and a fraction of the time.
Yeah, that's right.
You got my attention. I mean,
I
good grief.
love it.
I know. So, what do you see? Are there any changes on the horizon that you see coming towards this way of learning that may make it better, may be areas of concern?
Yeah, there are a couple things that spring to mind. Of course, schools changing their equivalencies and how they accept these different platforms and the classes that these platforms offer is always top of mind for us. Just yesterday, University of Maine at Presque Isle, which is a really popular hacking school, released a very big revamp of the way that they accept classes, in particular from Sophia and Study, and they reduced a lot of what they accept. And this will impact hundreds, if not thousands, of students who have been working up to earning these credits and then transferring them into the school. I think one of the things that is really disheartening about those changes is that they often come without any warning from the school. It wouldn't
Mm,
take any monetary input or really any extra time for them to just put a banner on the website that says, hey, if you're looking into applying to these majors, there's changes coming to what you might be planning to do. Just be aware of that. Something as simple as that. And we see that a lot with places like Sophia or Straighter Line or Study. They'll do that where they have banners on their websites that say we're phasing this class out, or giving the community an update. I think if you're a school that's going to say that you believe in hacking, and if you allow it, then you believe in it, or you should, then you should really be transparent and honest about whether you stop believing in it or whether you need to shift some things. What's been, I think, most frustrating is that the schools won't really give a specific rationale for why these changes are made, right? They'll say very general things like, we just want to make sure that students are prepared for the workforce. And okay, I can respect that. But as a student, that doesn't tell me whether you think I'm hurting myself by taking these classes on Sophia. Maybe it's a situation where you've had professors come to you and say, everyone who's gone through this math class on Sophia and then come into my math class has not been prepared enough. We need to stop accepting that class. Okay, as a student, I'm fully on board with that now because I understand that you're making that change for my benefit and for graduation rate benefits. And we're all on the same page with that. But when you just make changes in a silo and you don't explain to people what your rationale was and why you did that, then it just breeds a lot of chaos and a lot of negative feelings towards hacking where people say, oh, this was inevitable. Hacking is a terrible thing. But that might not even be the heart behind why the change was made. So that would be one thing is schools, making these changes, but not really telling everybody where their head's at, why they're making these changes so that we can react appropriately and kind of plug the gaps or fix things so that students are better prepared. The other thing is the government, of course. With any new administration, you're going to change some things, you're going to shake up some things. A
mhm.
lot of people super worried that things like Pell Grant or financial aid are going to go away. Those things aren't going to go away. They might be housed under a different branch of the government or something like that. Not saying all the changes are positive, but let's be honest, this is a really broken industry. We need to revamp the way that we look at higher education, what we think is appropriate, the way we train students. We're in a different world than we were in when we created these systems originally, and we haven't really changed them much since that time. So I do think it's good that we're revisiting what the value of college is really going to be in the future, because one of the things that Trump has talked about in particular is the need for accreditation. Do we need that body anymore? Do we trust that body anymore? When I look at schools like University of Phoenix and University of the People in particular having regional accreditation, it blows my mind. And it makes me question whether we really are, putting the effort needed into those checks and balances to inspire confidence from the public.
You make a good point about you can't just rip the rug out from under people. You got to give them an
Yeah.
opportunity to plan and adjust. And something you just said there at the end, Are some of these online universities, and I want to be careful, I'm not making an accusation, this is just a blanket question. Do you have a little bit of a diploma mill thing going on where it's just, we'll take your money and here you go as a piece of paper, but the recipient of that piece of paper is not really getting, maybe they just need to check a box and they don't care. But do you find that the education that you get online is equivalent to what you get in class for the most part?
This is an excellent question. I think there are so many different factors that weigh into this. It's really hard to give a straight answer. But of
Mhm.
course, there's no way I'm going to say that sitting in a class residentially on a campus is the same experience as taking a class online in your pajamas at home. It just isn't. But the value proposition that's in that residential class does not apply to everyone. And that's the thing I think people forget.
Uh,
Just because you got a college degree doesn't mean it was in the best way for you or the most advantageous way for you. Again, if you're an 18-year-old kid, there's so much value in you being on campus and having those relationships and networking and learning how the world works. If you're a 60-year-old C-suite executive, you're not going back to community college to sit in with a bunch of 18-year-olds. There is literally zero value in that for you.
yeah. That is a very valid point. You do a lot in your pajamas, I'm picking up. You're
I
taking a
love being
lot
in
of
my pajamas. Yes, this is why I can never not work from home again.
Is the student loan thing, how do the I'm thinking back to when I got loans. A Perkins loan, I think, was one of them, and a Pell Grant, I think that's a grant. I forget what the other major government loan was, but do they look at these online courses with a different take, or do they just see them as far as a loan standpoint or a qualifying for a loan standpoint the same?
Yeah, from a loan standpoint, they're pretty much the same. The big difference is in the cost of attendance. So, if you're going to go to a residential school, the government's calculating how much money you make, how much money the program costs, and then they're figuring out how much to give you based on those factors. In an online program, the overhead basically goes away, right? You have so much less cost of attendance in an online program than you do in a residential program. So, in that regard, things are very different. But in terms of giving you what's needed to cover the online tuition, it pretty much works the same. Most people don't feel a difference.
I didn't know if they would see it as, well, we're not going to do the loan because we're not going to get as much back because it's less expensive, or if they viewed it differently academically. But if it's accredited, I wouldn't see they would
Right.
see it as different.
Exactly. Currently, regional accreditation is really what we use to determine if a school gets funding or not.
You mentioned a minute ago about the need for accreditation, and I want to say up front, I have zero knowledge about accreditation, what the process entails, what it even means, other than it's a good thing, I guess.
Yes.
But do we need accreditation? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I do think we need some sort of external body that is not the school itself weighing in on whether the school is doing good things or bad things. Because if we look back at history, like the Corinthian school saga, we know that there are plenty of schools that can pop up and just do very evil things. And if nobody's watching, they're happy to go on doing that for an extended period of time. And there have
Mhm.
been many schools who have hurt many, many people, targeting them because they don't know how higher ed works, taking all their financial aid money, leaving them with no real skills. There's lots of great books on this, but yeah, so we see over history that it's not an industry where we can just deregulate everything and walk away for sure. So there does need to be some sort of hallmark of quality. And but
Mm.
what that is might change, because right now how it works is regional accrediting bodies. You've got regional and national accreditation. National is actually considered the less valuable one. You typically always want to try to attend a regionally accredited school. Usually when you want to go get a master's or a good job where they're looking at your transcripts, they will specifically look at whether your school was regionally accredited. A whole different topic. The regional and national have since merged, a year ago or whatever, but nobody really looks at it like that yet because it's too new. So, technically there is no differentiation, but there is. So yeah, so usually they're looking at the regional accreditation status to decide if a program is solid or not.
The loan process, another little side note, when you do a consultation with somebody, which you offer that on your website, what do you help them? Let's dive into that. Let's just go down
Yeah.
this really good topic. Do you help them not only get a game plan together as far as these are the classes that you need to take to get from point A to point B? Do you help them with financial aid? Do you maybe not do the financial aid portion for them, but you give them the resources to then go and apply for themselves? What all do you offer when you do a consultation with someone?
Yeah, it mostly depends on what the client needs because we have people that
Okay.
come from all kinds of backgrounds. So sometimes I have clients who are like, I barely finished high school. I've never even spoken to a college or looked anything up. I have no idea about anything about this world. And in that case, I'm going to give them every single link, every single explanation that they're going to need to move forward. We won't like fill out the FAFSA for anybody or anything like that, but
Mhm.
I'll definitely give the link. I'll give the school codes for the schools that we've been looking at together so they can add that to the FAFSA. I tell them how the process will go when the school contacts them to talk about their aid package and stuff like that. So definitely give them some insight about what to expect. I think demystifying higher education is probably the number one thing that we're doing, besides just building equivalency charts for which class to take for what at which school. Other than that, it's all about just making it accessible and making it not scary. Because most people think, oh, you have to be so smart to go to college. And, really, you just have to be willing to work hard and put up with some administrative red tape, and that's about it.
The what you just said right there about demystifying the college experience, I can see someone like if someone came to me, I'm almost 51 years old. If someone said, "Hey, you need to go back to college," man, the mountain in front of me, I would not be looking forward to that. I don't know
Yes.
what I'm going to see when I sit down at a computer. I'm relatively tech savvy, but I just don't know what I'm in for. What are some of the common misconceptions that people have when they come to you about online college that you just see a lot and go, nope, that's a common misconception, and here's the truth.
Yeah, one of the things is definitely the age of credit because most of our clients are still adults. We have probably maybe 10% of younger people, but the rest are adults. And so for many of them, they have tried college before, it didn't go well, and they have never tried again. And so they'll come to me and say, "Oh, I don't have any credit anymore because that was back in, the 70s or the 80s." And I routinely see credits come over from as early as the 60s I've seen before transfer over into new schools. So I think there's a general belief that if you got started before and you waited a long time, there's no way to use any of that to get help you get finished now. But actually, usually there is.
Hmm. I hadn't thought about that part of it. Is the tech side of things, I mean, I know you mentioned earlier when I said all you really need is a laptop. What's is the interface for these online schools? Is it pretty straightforward and easy to pick up? I know that it's different per school, but as a general rule, is it usually pretty user friendly?
Oh my gosh, such a variety of qualities of learning management systems. We call them LMSs, learning management
Okay.
systems. At Liberty University, for example, phenomenal. They have a whole room of coders who are sitting there building all of their amazing tools and dashboards and class interfaces and things like that. They do use Canvas for their LMS, so they didn't make that proprietary, but they put a lot of effort into making sure that the UX UI and the student experience is really really good. And then you've got really small schools that use other things like Brightspace is another learning management system, very much more 90s looking. So these smaller schools that don't have as much resource for things like the LMS, little bells and whistles and stuff, it's definitely a less exciting and colorful and intuitive experience, but all the functions are still there. You just have to explore a little bit more.
Well, the cosmetics of it, a lot of times that's what you get when you have the bigger operations. But
Yes, totally.
do you find that most of your students, and I'm asking you tech questions here, but do most folks use one specific browser, or is it usually a Windows computer or a Mac computer, or does it matter?
I don't think it matters too much. I would say the browser, if anything, is what seems to matter the most. Most of my Firefox Mozilla users have to switch over to Chrome to make some of the pop out videos and things work from some of these courses. So I
Mm.
think there is some maybe alterations needed for those who are on older platforms or something like that. But in general, it's pretty low. Like the school will always give you a setup requirement, so they'll say you need a computer that runs at least this, that, or the other to make our classes work and that sort of thing. But as most things move to the cloud now, I don't see nearly as much of those technological issues anymore from students. I used to get a ton of emails like, I can't open this thing or whatever, and we'd have to go into an incognito window or do a bunch of weird stuff to kind of bypass the ad blocker that was going on or whatever. Now it seems like most systems are pretty intuitive, and I don't get nearly as many of those emails now that I'm thinking about it.
Are most of these online classes, and this may depend on the class, are you just watching videos and answering questions online or typing stuff in? Or do you have presentations that an instructor will do? He'll go live or she'll go live and do a presentation and then you have to interact? Or is it just a hodgepodge of all of the above?
Yeah, there are schools like that still. We call them synchronous, where you meet at a specific time with other people from your class. But most schools, especially all the ones we talk about, are going to be asynchronous, where you have deadlines in the class, if you do, which we'll talk more about. But for those schools that do have weekly deadlines, they'll tell you at the beginning of the class what all the deadlines are and what everything is due by those deadlines. So as long as you're meeting the deadline, you can complete the work at any point in time. So you can log on at 2 a.m. or 2 p.m., whatever works for you.
Has the method that they use to teach, as far as the style, has that changed? And more specifically, what I'm trying to ask, and I'm just not doing a very good job at it, the we mentioned early that you'll have the way people would learn, where it's just like, well, here, memorize this to pass the test, and then just move on. You check the box and you're fine. But if you ask somebody 2 months after they took that test, they can't remember anything. Has there been anything that maybe changes the way the information is absorbed, or whether it's delivered so it is absorbed better?
Yes, using it, manipulating it. So I think this is a failure of previous models of higher education before competency based came out, really. And it's not that you can't.
Competency based, that's the term.
Yes. Yeah, competency based education is awesome. So that's going to be a program where you don't have specific deadlines. You usually just have a term length. So, for example, a school might say you have 8 weeks in this term, pay me a flat rate for access to my system during those 8 weeks, and then you can finish as many classes as you want to. So the class doesn't run for any set number of weeks. It doesn't have weekly deadlines. There's no other students that you're interacting with in the course with you. It's really just you and the material and the assignments that are required. So if you're someone who has 30 years of experience in your field and you're going back to school majoring in something in your field, then you can imagine how much easier of a process that's going to be, because now
Yeah.
you're just dumping what's already in your brain out into these papers and assignments, and you're moving on in a few days or a couple of weeks versus 8 or 16 weeks of a whole semester.
Do you find that that competency-based learning approach is more effective with adults versus, like, teenagers, or does that just really click with a lot of people across the board?
It seems to click with a lot of people across the board, especially those that are neurodivergent. This is something we see a lot in our client base, which is people saying, I just never fit the mold. When I was in high school, I was bouncing around. I was interested in doing things, not hearing things. Sitting and listening was not my thing. And it's not that those people were unintelligent or unable to be successful. In fact, most of them come to us, oh, I have millions of dollars from my companies that I've started over the years, and I'm very
Yeah.
successful, but I've always wanted that piece of paper. That's something that comes up all the time. So, yeah, so it just having this way of learning that is based more on your time frame, your ability to go fast or slow based on how interested you are, or how much time you have in your life. I think that's what was really missing, and that being there now is bringing a lot of people back to the table, where they're saying, okay, well, there's a way that I could actually be successful in this world now where there wasn't before.
Totally random question. If I just came to you and said, "Do you have any advice for how I can be successful as I step into this online college project, or this, task that I have in front of me to graduate?" Do you have 2 or 3 bits of advice that, if I follow them, my chances of success and smoother sailing go up?
Humility, curiosity, and networking. I think those are the
Ah,
three things that are really, really important when you're in an online degree. Most people, especially adults, because they're not really on chat forums as much as younger people typically, but
mhm.
so they don't usually realize, but there are these robust communities on Reddit and Discord and even Facebook, lots of different platforms where students who are taking the same classes as you or have the same plan as you are all kind of talking together and sharing useful information together about, oh, this professor really hates this topic. Don't write your paper on that. Those kinds of things that are
Mhm.
unique to different professors or situations that aren't just globally applicable from school to school.
Aside from Reddit, which I think most folks listening know about Reddit, are there any other forums that you've seen that, and I'm not asking for an endorsement, but just ones that
Yeah.
you've heard a lot of people say, I got a lot of value out of this forum or that forum?
Yeah, the top two are always Reddit and Discord. Discord's the other one, which is more of a chat, function, but very
Yeah.
similar to Reddit in that people are usually anonymous and are sharing bits of information. But there's all kinds of different sub channels for all the specific schools, so you can just jump right into an ongoing discussion from current students about, the day and age at that school, whatever the hot information is or whatever's happening.
Is there anything that you dislike about your current job?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Don't say
Probably.
Dr. Clifford that because he's
Oh
great.
my
I really
gosh.
like him. I really like him a lot.
Oh my gosh, me too. He's such a wonderful human. Him and his wife and kids are the coolest. I think the only thing that I dislike about my job right now is just how, and this sounds like a humble brag, but how busy we are. We're booked out about a month right now, and so
Yeah.
sometimes I have people miss their sessions or something, and they're like, "Oh, I just need to reschedule for tomorrow," and I'm like, "I'm booked out a month. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
at max already, doing the most that I possibly can." And so, what that means is we need to hire. But there, in this sort of industry where it's consulting based, there's always so much fear in that because it matters so much more who the person is rather than what they know. So it's finding that right fit. And when you're a company of, a handful of people, any addition is going to be a really big deal. It's going to change a lot of things. So just having the time, I think, to invest in creating onboarding materials and making sure that we're in a place where we can replicate the results that we've had and the happiness that clients have had so far. Because the last thing I want to do is decrease quality over time, right? Like if we're going to grow, we need to do it in a sustainable way because our mission is not to grow, it's to help as many people as possible. And if we're growing at the same time that that's happening, then awesome. But ultimately, the free resources that we're giving on YouTube is not just to get you in the door, it's a part of our actual mission. We really want as many people as possible to know that you don't have to spend $50,000 in 4 years getting a college degree.
Well, yeah, it's a good problem to have when you start getting all of, it's like this. I have so much on my plate right now. I am swamped. It's a blessing, but at the same time, you're just one or two people and you can only do so much. I mean, you still have a family, you have to prioritize things and whatnot. So
Right.
I can see that. But you talked about hiring people, but what are your future plans for College Hacked? What can your viewers expect over the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, well, I'll give you a hot scoop that Cliff doesn't even
All
know
right.
yet. So we'll see how he
Okay.
feels about it.
You heard it here
I
first, folks.
That's right. This is right. Hot off the press.
Yeah.
I would love to try to hire my mom for the next consultant that we have working with us because she's been in higher ed for 30 years. She's been C-suite a number of times. She's held basically every role in higher ed you can have. She knows way more than I or Cliff know. I think she would be an excellent addition. But she's got her own stuff going on, so she's talked about maybe in the future I could start shadowing you and maybe learn the ropes. But yeah, I mean, just a wonderful person, wonderful coach. I always feel like I'm not even her daughter because I'm so starstruck by her. I think she's just one of the coolest people I've ever met. So successful and kind-hearted and just helpful. Just seeks to help and understand others. So yeah, that's I would love to in the next year try to get my mom to start seeing some clients too because she's awesome.
Well, do you want me to? I'll start a petition and we can get Dr.
Yes,
Clifford on board. And
I love that.
so I always ask one of the questions that I really am curious about the answer from every guest, and it doesn't matter, who it is or what their occupation is. I always ask for their advice on how to deal with failure. If someone comes to you and said, "I blew it. I made a mistake," whether it was in, filling out a form or taking a class or someone that works for you in the past, what advice can you give someone on how best to deal with failure?
Mm, I like that. Good question. I think when I think about personal failure, I think for me, the number one thing that comes to mind is taking responsibility. And that's whether it only impacted you or whether it impacted other people too, but not covering it up, being honest about it, realizing what the implications are of the failure. What do I need to do now to fix this, to make this right? If you're the only person involved, then a big part of it is not beating yourself up, right? Realizing that failure is a part of learning. You have to fail in order to innovate, in order to grow and move forward. So failure should really be expected. The scale of failure is, of course, going to vary. So if you're looking at losing your house versus maybe gaining a pound because you ate too
Yeah.
much out or something, those failures
Mhm.
are slightly different. But yeah, in general, I think the most important thing when you mess up is to be honest about it and to confront it head on and to look at the whole situation. A lot of people love to bury their head because they're so either ashamed or overwhelmed or whatever it might be with failure, but that's the worst thing you can do because now it's just going to
Yeah.
fester and you're going to feel worse and worse about it. It's going to impact every area of your life. You have to get it out, journal or talk to somebody or do what you got to do, but you got to get through the feelings of it so you can take action.
I heard an example once about people like to sweep failure under the rug, but the problem is that makes a hump in the rug that you constantly trip over.
Ooh, I love that.
And it's such a perfect analogy because there's just that little bit of difference in height. But you walk over that, you walked up and down that hallway 10 times a day, and it doesn't take much to trip you up. And it'll do it until you finally rip that rug back and handle the mess.
That is
And that,
such a good visual.
well, thanks.
Yeah. It makes me think of clients that I have all the time that say, I've been so successful in my career, but I just don't have that piece of paper. And it's always that stick in my craw. It's the thing that
Yeah.
keeps me awake at night. And yeah, it's the bump under the rug for a lot of people.
I can tell you're from Virginia, sticking my craw. You don't hear that too. You don't hear that from folks on the West Coast.
That's right. My grandma's from Tennessee, so I have some
Oh,
of her
there you go.
Nickisms. Yes,
You've got some hillbilly sayings then.
that's right.
So, Dr. Clifford, you guys work so well together. When I watch your YouTube videos, there's an ebb and flow there. You can tell that you both have a lot of mutual respect for each other, admiration for each other. You just fill in the gaps perfectly as you answer questions and discuss things.
Oh, thanks.
Is that just a familiarity that you have with each other, or is that something that comes naturally, or do you have to work on it?
Oh, great question. I think from the first time I ever met Cliff, we were instantly united by this strong principle of justice. I think we're both really justice oriented people where we want to do the right thing even if it's hard. And that's, no pat on our back. It just we're built in that way where that's one of our top priorities. Everybody has a different focus and that's why, many parts make up the body, so that being a uniting force I think has always made us get along really well. When he called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, do you want to come work for me?" The first thing I said was, when I mess somebody's plan up, are we going to pay for it? Because that's what's really important to me is if I mess up, can I make it right? Because it's going to happen. I'm really good at my job, but it's going to happen. Now nobody's perfect. So am I going to have the resources? Am I going to have your support to not pretend that we didn't do anything wrong, but to confront it and to make it right? And he said, absolutely. You've always had that, when you've been with me previously, and it wouldn't change now. So I think that we're very united by this desire to help other people better themselves in their lives and their families' lives, especially. But then also, to do what's right even when it's hard.
The online YouTube game, and I'm going to ask this question partly for my own knowledge because I just do an audio podcast. The video thing, that's a big
Yeah.
step up in expense and time and editing and all of that kind of stuff. And I've already got
Mm.
one career.
Yes.
So, but do you have any advice on growing an online channel, whether it's a podcast or a YouTube channel or whatever? What things do you do or have you done that you've seen a good return on your investment as far as growth?
Great question. Cliff would definitely answer this in a much more thorough way because he does more of that stuff than I do. But there is one huge example that I can think of immediately, and that's the comments on our YouTube channel. I have
Mm,
primarily handled the comments for the last probably year and a half, and Cliff will jump in sometimes, especially if they're directed immediately at him. But we get a lot more comments as time goes on. And one of the things that I hear from clients in sessions all the time is, I picked you guys because you're so thorough in the comments and you give away so much information for free, and that made me feel like, I could trust you. You weren't just in it for the money. And I'm so grateful that that comes through because that is true. Not to sound super cliche, but the mission for us here is much deeper than just making a buck. I have a PhD. I could go get another really, really well paying job where I make much more than I make at this job pretty
mhm.
quickly, I would imagine, even in this market. I know that's tough to say, but yeah, so I think we're here because we want to be here and not because we're just trying to make a buck. And that's important to us. So growing wise, we have a ton of word of mouth. I'd say that's the largest way that we grow besides YouTube. We don't do any marketing. So it's really just the YouTube and when people are happy with us and they tell others that they know that we exist. And so, yeah, so word of mouth and then the comments, just interacting with our community base and the people that are maybe already done with their degree, but they're just so excited about hacking and they're part of the community now that they continuously come back to watch the videos and comment. That's really special.
The comment section is something that you talked about giving away a lot of good information and not basically having all of your information hoarded behind a paywall.
Yeah.
And I think that lends itself to these folks are actually trying to help. Yes, there's a profit side to it. Of course there is. I don't make any money doing this podcast. I
Yeah.
don't need to remind myself of that, but um, I enjoy having the conversations with folks like yourself. It's interesting. It's fun. I get a bunch of free knowledge talking with
Yeah.
people like yourself, and I can do it. When I have time, I control the schedule, but I can see how if people are going to it lends itself to your true intentions and them being genuine and real, as opposed to eventually I'm just going to give you a link for my paid course or how to make money off of you. It's not a hook.
Yes. Yes. Actually, so when I first jumped on with College Hacked, Cliff sat me down and said, "This is our marketing strategy." He said, "Other people do it differently, and there's other players in our same niche that do it differently, where they like the paywalls and they like the, lead you down the rabbit hole and then give you value at the end of it." He said, "We're going to do the opposite." He said, "I've studied marketing strategies, and it's really important to me that we give people a lot of free information so that they can do this on their own. If they either can't afford us or they don't want to pay for it, they can still do it. But then I want to provide a luxury service basically where people can opt out of that and not spend the 50 or 60 hours to do it themselves. And, hopefully we'll get enough people to pay for it." But he, from the very beginning, sat me down, gave me a book on marketing and said, "This is what we're doing. And it's very intentional." So I respect him a lot for that.
What's one of the best compliments that you've gotten with this college hacked thing? Is there one or two instances that really pop out that kind of bring a tear to your eye? Or
The first time somebody showed up in a session with me and said, "Oh, it's you. I was so hoping it was going to be you. Nothing against Cliff. I love Cliff, but I was really hoping I'd get you." That shocked me because from the very beginning, people were so used to seeing Cliff and he's the face of everything and he's got a great personality. He's had YouTube channels before that were very fun. He used to be the pop song professor. Look it up. Super good time.
okay,
But yeah, so he was very used to being kind of this YouTube version of famous, and I was not. And so when I'd meet with clients, a lot of times they were disappointed because they're like, "Oh, okay, I'm not upset, but I was sort of hoping to meet Cliff," that sort of thing. And
yeah.
now more often than not, people are like, "Oh, good, I got you," and that just warms my heart.
Do you rub it in his face? Do you say I'm their favorite kind of thing?
No, because he totally is so nice. He's always like, "Well, they should see you. You know everything. I don't know, hardly anything." Sometimes people pay extra to meet with Cliff, and he's always like, "Oh, that's so funny because really you probably know more than I do," which I think is funny.
When as we kind of land the plane here, what when someone comes and they get a consultation from you, we talked about, kind of that you offer that service and a couple of high points, but what should people expect going into a consultation with you? If they decide, okay, I'm ready, I want to step up to that luxury service, that custom service that you offer to help me, and my path, what should they expect before they go into that meeting?
Yeah, we have two different options or entry points where you could jump in with us. If you're coming to the table without much knowledge and you feel like you don't really have a good grasp of what schools are an option or what differences there are between hacking methods or competency based versus standard schools, asynchronous versus synchronous, all these kind of higher ed terms that a lot of people aren't familiar with, it's definitely in your best interest to do a two-session package that we offer, because that first session, we're going to spend a full 50 minutes on Zoom. I'll screen share. We'll go over all the different school options, the hacking platforms. I'll ask you if you like papers or tests better, if you like deadlines or no deadlines, kind of give you the lay of the land in terms of what's on offer when you're hacking a degree. And then that way we can pair you with the best school and major for your situation, because everybody's goals are different and everybody's learning aptitudes are different. Somebody may love exams, somebody may hate exams. There's different schools that offer, different delivery styles. So we're really trying to pair you with the best fit so that you have longevity in that degree and you're more likely to persist and finish. So that would be the first session if you don't know too much. And then the second session, we would get back together after you've applied to that school, maybe sent any transfer credits that you had to them to get those evaluated. The school will give a name to each of those classes so that I can then tell you how those classes will fit into your degree plan. And we can build the rest of the equivalencies. So I'll say, take these things on Sophia, take these things on Straighterline, that sort of thing. So that by the time we end the second session, there's really no question left about anything. And you just take the steps that are laid out in the document and move forward. The second option is if you maybe do have a lot of familiarity, maybe you've binged our videos for an extended period of time and know a lot about the college options and think you're probably pretty sure that you want to go to X school for X major, then we offer just a single session for around half the price of the two-session package. And that one's just to get together for one 50-minute Zoom call where we're planning all the classes and then writing out the next steps and everything. So you skip that first session of comparing schools.
So the package that they get, or the end result, is going to be, it's literally a step by step, like A, B, C, D. This is what you want to do. This is your game plan to get from starting college to finishing college, correct?
Exactly. Yes.
Wow. So turnkey, everything, follow the plan, and you'll be a millionaire. Well, maybe not a millionaire, but you'll be successful. More successful than you are now. let's
Yes,
let's
exactly.
rein that in just a little bit. I don't want to make promises you
Big
can't keep.
words.
So absolutely outstanding interview. Thank you so much. I'm gonna probably watch more of your videos this evening. I saw you guys had a couple
Oh,
new ones
thanks.
up, but where can they? I mentioned it at the beginning, but please tell the listeners where they can find you, how they can reach you, and in the different social media aspects that you have.
Yeah, the easiest thing is going to be the YouTube for sure. Under the About section, we have our general email inbox listed, and that is just team@flexed.net. So that is a way you can always reach us. My email is lauren@collegehacked.com, so pretty simple to remember. So you can always reach out via email. We encourage people, if they think that maybe we would be a good fit for their situation, but they aren't sure if we can really help, type us up a little paragraph of your context and situation. Throw us your transcripts if you are comfortable, and I can get back to you and at least tell you, yeah, based on what you have left, I have some school options where you could save, $8,000 or whatever on what you have left. So that way you can decide if the expenditure is worth it. In general, it's pretty easy for us to pay for ourselves because the ROI on our services is actually kind of insane when you think about it. So I do think it's normally worth it if you're trying to save the time. If you are flush with time and you want a hobby, this is a great hobby to jump into. Map your own degree for sure. But yeah.
That does not sound like a good time as far as mapping out my own college. That sounds awful. But I think your service is something that I would certainly pay for, just for the ease of having a turnkey package delivered to me. And then there's nobody to blame if it doesn't work except me. So
Well, thanks for that. Yeah, I think that would be that would definitely that tells me what type of person you are. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. You are responsible for yourself, and your success or failure depends on you. I love that.
well, hopefully my one of my boys, at least for sure in the next year or so, might be reaching out to you. So we may talk
Awesome.
again in the future. But thank you so much. I know you're busy. You've got a lot of irons in the fire. So thank you for taking the time to talk with me. Hopefully the listeners got a lot out of this. I know that I did.
Thank you so much. It's been so wonderful to be here. I'll have to convince Cliff to get on the phone with you too. I think you guys would have a great time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's probably going to be jealous after listening to your interview, I think.
That's right. I got to you first.
That's right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And that wraps up another episode of the Jobs Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hopefully you found that interesting. As always, I wait until the end of an interview to ask you to like, subscribe, and share. I feel it's important that I earn that support from you. Thanks again, and we will see you on the next one.